Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Julio Suárez. I am Managing Director of Social Impact Practice at DRiWaterstone Human Capital. It is my pleasure to be moderating today's webinar, The State of the Nonprofit Workforce. Before I introduce our panelists, let me just tell you for a minute or two, who DRiWaterstone is. So we're an executive search firm with over 20 years of experience. We're based in our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We have consultants across the country. I'm based in St. Louis. I have a colleague in California. And we do searches literally coast to coast. We work with purpose and mission-driven organizations. That includes nonprofits, associations, foundations, corporate citizenship teams, and social enterprises. And we help them to build high-performance teams and cultures. We recruit basically for all executive levels. So that includes the executive director, president, CEO, but also the full VP and C-suite levels. So that could be the chief HR officer, that could be the chief financial officer, chief operating officer, et cetera, chief policy officer. And then we do the full range of fundraising and development functions. So that's from a development officer all the way up to the chief development officer. Again, we have over 20 years experience and do searches literally from coast to coast. If you have any questions, we invite you to visit DRiWaterstonehc.com to learn more and to connect with one of our consultants. So let's get started with today's webinar and conversation. Last year, the National Council on Nonprofits released its 2023 Nonprofit Workforce Survey. In it, it describes some of the challenges nonprofits continue to face with recruiting enough employees and to provide vital services because of the lack of talent, basically, or the lack of ability to recruit enough talent. In fact, the study actually revealed that the nonprofits were struggling even more so than before the pandemic. And then more recently, earlier this year, the Center for Effective Philanthropy released its State of Nonprofit 2024 report. In it, it actually explores some of the reasons for employee turnover, highlighting some of the growing rates of burnout, not only among staff, but senior leadership, including the executive directors and CEOs. Some of that has led to things like loss of funding, inability to provide competitive pay and benefits, and so on. So if you have not had a chance to review both of those reports, I highly encourage you to do so. I believe both of them are free, and they're full of insightful information that it's been helpful for us today in today's discussion. The impact of these challenges in nonprofits is pretty significant. And frankly, it's not just on nonprofits, because if you account all the nonprofits and their workforce, nonprofits represent the third largest employer in the United States. Think about that. Third largest employer in the United States. That's huge. So how do we go about solving some of these challenges? That is the point or the topic of today's conversation. So let's dive into that question. I'm excited to be joined by two exceptional leaders who are frankly veterans of the nonprofit and association sectors. So I'm going to take a minute to introduce both of them, but please note that we're going to have an opportunity for you to ask questions. We'll answer those questions towards the end of today's webinar. If you do have a question, and I hope you do, we encourage you to use the Q&A function, not the chat function, the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So first up is Lou DiGioia. Lou is the Chief Operating Officer at the National Association of Theater Owners, where he oversees the association's operations, which includes membership, finance, IT, HR, and program implementation. And Catherine Townsend, who's the President and CEO of the Trust for the National Mall. Since 2016, Catherine has led the organization's vision and strategy to accomplish its mission as the leading philanthropic partner of the National Park Service to restore, enrich, and preserve the National Mall and the adjacent President's Park and White House grounds. And as I said, I'm in Washington, D.C., and the grounds and the White House and the mall are spectacular. So good job, Catherine, and your team. So welcome, everyone. To get us started, I would like to ask, I realize I already told you a little bit about who they are, but I'd love to ask each of our panelists to take just 2 minutes to tell us just a little extra about who they are, their organization. So Lou, if you could please just get us started.
Sure, be happy to. Thank you, Julio. So I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the National Association of Theater Owners. That's a C6 trade association for movie theaters, not Broadway theaters. So we always have to make that clear. Our members range from the largest chains, AMC, Regal, Cinemark, down to hundreds of small businesses, 1 and 2 screen theaters that can be found in all 50 states in the country. Before working at this trade association, I was a chief operating officer at the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, which is a C3 charitable organization focused on that particular disease. So, over the past 4 years between those two organizations, I've probably overseen 30 to 40 hires. So happy to have this discussion here and talk about some of the trends and challenges that we face in this industry.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lou. We're happy to have you. Catherine, tell us about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm honored to be here today. Hi, I'm Catherine Townsend. I'm the president and CEO of the Trust for the National Mall. We're the leading philanthropic partner, 501c3, dedicated partner of the National Park Service, and we're dedicated to restoring, enriching, and preserving the National Mall, as you heard Julio say. How we do that is that we bring funding, private funding, and expertise to time-sensitive restoration projects. We bring enhanced educational opportunities to the 36 million visitors that visit every year, and we mobilize volunteers to help with that educational enrichment and support throughout the National Mall to support those visitors. We're the highest visited national park in the country and one of the top visited parks in the world. And we're pretty proud of our work. And basically, our bigger vision is that we strive to ensure the legacy of the National Mall as a place that inspires all people, honors all Americans, and is accessible to all and celebrates our nation's identity.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today. As you can imagine, because of the work that we do as an executive search firm, we talk to a lot of nonprofit leaders. And so undoubtedly, when we talk to nonprofit and frankly, nonprofit associations and the philanthropic leaders, when we talk to them, recruiting and retaining top talent is pretty much among the top of the list, right? Oftentimes fundraising and development, and then either right below or right at parity is recruiting and retaining talent. And so why don't we go ahead and ask Lou here to just get us started. My first question is, how would you describe the recruitment environment for nonprofits today? You've been in the nonprofit and association sector for some time. So how do you describe it today based on what you're seeing?
Yeah, it's a great question. There are challenges. Like you said, there are certain positions that are a challenge to fill now, like they always have been, fundraising being the top one. Good fundraisers are very hard to find. So, when you have a position you're trying to fill, that's the challenge. You have to, really focus on making sure you're doing all you can to get the best candidate pool. But at the same time, I see signs and reasons for optimism. I think there's interest in the sector. I think people these days are looking for meaning in their work, and we provide that in the nonprofit sector. I feel that I've seen more people coming over from the for-profit sector looking to gain entry into our space. And I think that's a great opportunity there because they bring over skills that maybe we don't have in our organizations. And it's up to us to see that and take advantage of it.
That's such a insightful point, that the interest in the nonprofit sector. I think all three of us have made it a career to pursue careers that have some kind of meaning, impact, if you will, right? I found it very interesting. I'm going a little off script here, but I remember earlier this year they took a survey. Somebody took a survey of college students, basically soon to be graduates, right? And like, who would their top employers be? Right? Like, where do they want to go work? And they started listing some companies, and in the past, it have been Google or Goldman Sachs or whatever, right? And those are great companies, organizations still, and very desirable. But the number one was St. Jude Children's Hospital.
Wow.
Right? So I guess, Catherine, I'd love to kind of hear your take as well as to what you've seen in the nonprofit sector.
Yeah, I would agree with Lou. I think on the the definitely the meaning is really important. I think when you're in the brand and the leadership and what people are looking for, if they're going to go into the nonprofit sector, they know they're going for something more meaningful. They want to think about the impact they're going to have. You know, all mission driven nonprofits are mission driven, right? They're either saving lives or they're enriching lives. And so, you know, I'm not surprising that St. Jude's is at the top of that, right? Because people care. If they're going to go in the mission driven, they might want to save lives. And so I think, you know, it's important for nonprofits. There's the other challenges, like we're resource strapped sometimes. Most nonprofits are resource strapped. And so there's got to make decisions. You've got to invest in certain places. You've got to make decisions about your teams and the size and what you can offer. And as you're a fledgling, I've worked in a lot of new nonprofits trying to make their way, or turnaround organization situations. And so you struggle with, you can't offer as many benefits. You can't offer certain things, you know, so you take advantage of, well, you can come with us and we'll, you know, you can get on the bus and be a part of this mission and the impact we're going to make. That actually gets them excited. Could be something like a physical space like we have, this national treasure that people want to be a part of. Or they might say, hey, I can get more flex time. I can have, you know, more, maybe the benefits include more time off. You can't give me a salary increase, but I can get time off. So there's some trade-offs that a lot of people, there's a different mindset you're looking for, or you're listening to the new candidate and what they're looking for, and you see if there's a nice marriage there. I will say that, or a partnership or relationship to bring you into the organization. I will say I agree with Lou as well. I think one of the hardest things we're finding right now in the industry are fundraisers. It's been tough coming out of COVID. The burnout is hard, you know, especially with funding going into, you know, like saving lives and health and medical areas. You know, we're not a membership organization. We have to raise our dollars every start of our fiscal year. We start over from zero. And of course, we know we have projections and we know people who've given to us on a regular basis, but you know, it is a grind on the fundraising side. And you really have to, you know, and I've noticed, and I've talked to a lot of my peers, you know, industry standards is like, its turnover rate is 18 months. I mean, that's not very long for for fundraisers to come in and work with you. So, you know, that's the average, you know, so you really try to hone in and have people really believe in what they're fundraising for and enjoy the benefits, the shorter milestones to get to where you're going. But it's interesting. And I think, you know, even with the younger generation coming into the workforce, a lot of things we need to do in order to get them excited about being here. So we even did it in our switch. We actually had to move out. Our lease was up during COVID. We switched, and one of the things we thought about was what's going to be attractive to team members to come in and work in the office, or make a trip in 1 or 2 days a week to come in. And even after the pandemic, what's going to be attractive? So we went for amenities. We wanted to have amenities where the staff felt like they could be outside, have a great view. There's a gym in the building. So we're thinking of those types of things and beefing up our benefits that are reasonable, that aren't that can be attractive. So a lot of interesting times right now, but I think people are looking for meaning coming out of what we experienced, and as long as the mission is moving towards a meaningful outcome or it's fun. I mean, I'm a big moviegoer, so Lou's making me jealous. I love what he's doing all day. You know, I love going to the theaters to see movies in theater. So, you know, to me, that's like, you might have a passionate employee who's looking for that loves that stuff. And that's what you're looking for. So those who really align with your mission's kind of spirit. And that makes it a more fun experience to go to work every day and attract the right talent.
Yeah, so no secret that both of you identified fundraising as a challenge in organizations. I oftentimes say, and I think Lou said it, it's like good fundraisers are tough to find. They're tougher to retain.
Tougher to retain. Yep,
So,
that's right.
and so is how do we make the workforce both appealing, attractive, a place where they can grow, succeed, and then also be very mission aligned, if you will, right? It's that's what we try to specialize in, and making sure that the individuals that we recruit to the organization not only are talented and experienced, but that they're mission aligned, right? Excuse me, sorry. So let's shift just a second. I'd love to kind of hear a little bit more how you're showcasing your mission and values. When we all recognize that mission is or purpose or social impact is a really appealing piece of the sauce, if you will, that helps us to recruit great talent. So how are you showcasing that? When are you showcasing that?
I'll go first on that. In the very first sentence of the job listing,
Mhm.
when we worked at the Alliance, this first sentence was, "Do you want to save lives?" And look, it feels sometimes like you're being over dramatic, or you're being a little cheesy by really hitting that right away. But that's it. That's what we want. That is the greatest differentiator that we have. Catherine made a great point. We can't pay the same as Google, right? So what do we have? We have our mission. So don't be shy about it. Use it. Put it in first sentence for our job listings at NATO. Talks about the movie-going experience. It's why I'm here. To Catherine's, I'm very happy that Catherine's a moviegoer. That's what we want. We want more moviegoers out there. And if you believe in the movie-going experience and you want to do your part, not just to protect it for you, but to ensure that it's there for others and for generations to come, this is the place you want to work. So start right away. It's in the job listing. We hit it in every single discussion we have in the interviews, every step along the way, the touch points that we have, reiterating that meeting, reiterating the mission, and getting them excited to come to work because of why we are here. If we emphasize that why, we get better candidates.
That's great. That's great. Go ahead, Catherine.
No, I was going to say, I agree with that. It's important that you get it out right away, and that they're part of something both meaningful and values driven, impact driven, and that, the work's going to be impact driven, and that we used to write, we used to join a small lean team, to kind of get this work done. We wanted to make sure people knew what they were going into. I think it's really important. I'm a big, I know our processes now and the tools we use don't naturally facilitate this, but I'm a big lover of like great cover notes, and I can always read out, like, if someone's looked at the job, really looked at the organization, has shared their passion for the work versus just a form letter. And I know immediately if someone's just looking for a job or if they're looking to be a part of this mission. And I think that's really important in a mission driven, in a nonprofit life. You have to source candidates that are believing in what you're doing, because you need them in the ups and the downs. There's going to be down times. There's going to be up times. You're not always going to hit your marks. You're not always going to hit your goals. We're going to strive for them because we want to have impact to our visitors and our stakeholders and our donors and our partners at the Park Service. Those are our three key audiences. And so we know there's going to be up and down times. So you want somebody on that team who understands, I want to be a part of that. I want to be part of that energy. I want to be a part of that work process. But it does need to be embedded. It does. And I know our team has worked to refine our processes in our interviewing. And so it's a part of questions. It's a question. There's questionnaire around that. There are questions in the interview process. When I end up meeting with people, I don't meet all of them, but when I meet some of my finalists and some of the positions, I'm always kind of teasing out, like, what's your favorite part of our website? Like, have they actually looked at it? And so sometimes when you get these amazing answers that just surprise you because they actually have searched and found and have honed in on something that's really important to them. I think that's really important. I think we have as employers have to have an eye for that when we're looking for great candidates and great talent.
That's great. I would also encourage that the time to showcase your mission, your values, what makes you sort of unique, and the impact you drive is actually before you start looking for an employee.
Yeah, it's
right?
in the job description.
It's not just in the job description. We do it on your website. You do it on your social media posts, right?
Your
You're
brand.
showcasing it all the time, right?
Yeah.
Just like you're showcasing it to potential funders, right? So
yeah, that's right. I mean, I think the key is, obviously you guys, one of the three key successes of a nonprofit is your brand. So Your brand needs to be tight, needs to be strong, needs to be like, you know, have the wow effect maybe, or just like the ah effect, like, oh, that's so great what they do. So if you're posting something, you want to make sure people are like, even if they don't recognize the trust, they might go and do research to figure out who we are. And so that forward facing to the community has to be strong. You have to look good. You have to have all your stuff answerable on your available for people that are looking for information. So
I know culture also is very important, and components like diversity, equity, and inclusion are very important, right? And so, Catherine, if you could maybe help us get started here, the role that D&I plays in your organization, and how do you how do you foster a culture that's welcome and inclusive, not only for the current workforce, but those new employees that you're trying to recruit to join you?
yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, it's embedded in everything we do across all our stakeholder groups and audience groups and our customers, we could say, or our visitors. I think, and our mindset is we're very, very intentional. We want to make sure we're being thoughtful and open and inclusive. You know, we are limited in resources, so it's like there's certain things we can't do. I know when folks we've hired great consultants to help. And one of the best advice we ever got was years ago, which was, don't try to tackle everything. You can't do it all. You have to do what works for your organization with the resources that you have, but be thoughtful across the board. And that's what we've always been. But it does take work, and it takes intention. And we always like to thematically talk about the National Mall as well. It's that it is open on all sides. There's no barriers to entry. And we want that feeling at the Trust when we do our hiring. We want people to know that you're welcome and we want you here. And, you know, but we can't rely, I'll say one other thing, we cannot rely on it just happening to you. Like, well, let's just look at the pool of applications. You have to be intentional about your outreach, your networking, your sourcing, your discussions, you have to go and it's recruitment and look and meet great people. There's so many wonderful people in the world, but to be intentional about your diverse teams. And one of my team members just said this, and I just love it, which is, we have such a different, diverse group of folks from different backgrounds and experience and ethnicity and everything. And on our board and on our team. But the one thing that joins us together is our passion for this mission. So I think there's this lovely approach to it. But again, we don't rely on just it coming at us. We have to be intentional and really be thoughtful. And we do it across our speakers, our honorees, our board, our staff, experiences, everything. So it's important.
Lou, transitioning just a tab here, just because I'm curious about how do you go about nurturing and retaining top talent, right? Any strategies that you're using first to identify who are those high potentials, for instance, that could, it'd be good to invest some additional time, effort, development, et cetera. So what strategies are you using? What tools are you using to nurture and retain talent?
Yeah, I think that top talent they want to work in organizations that are impactful. So your organization has to work well, right? So the best thing you can do to keep your best people is to have a high functioning organization. And the best way to do that is to have clarity in what you're trying to achieve, to have your goals laid out, and then hire great people and empower them to try to achieve those goals. So not micromanaging, not second guessing, their skill sets and their expertise, and really putting in an environment of empowerment, but also accountability, because there's nothing that will drain the energy from an organization when certain members or certain sectors of the organization are not performing and nobody seems to care or notice. So that accountability piece has to be there to keep your top people. If they look around and they see that it doesn't matter if they try really hard because nobody's noticing and other people aren't and nobody cares, they're going to leave your organization and go somewhere else. So that is that's the most important thing you can do to keep your top people.
That's excellent. And you touched on the turnover piece, which is great, because my next question to Catherine is actually on that. I'm wondering, because turnover is a reality, right? Whether it's wanted or unwanted, right? So I guess, are you seeing any sort of trends, if you will, right? On reasons why people are leaving, the industry, because not just your organization, but just the sector in general.
In the industry, I mean, I think we touched on it originally, it's a challenge we have, but also being a mission driven and trying to push for impact is, there is a high, you can get burnout, you're working hard, you're trying to meet the mission, you're trying to hit the goals. And especially in the fundraising cycle, and we have a very ambitious fundraising goal right now in honor of the 250th come up in 2026, everybody, July 4th, 2026. Is that we have a very ambitious fundraising goal and a campaign we're in the quiet phase of. And so it can be a burnout. It can be tough. And I think on something Lou just said, I think that's the other thing that's important is if you're working on programmatic work or you're a new team member and you want to grow in the organization I love the word empower. It's one of my favorite words. But I was also going to add, giving your team ownership of a project, let them own it, feel that impact, what they can, I was just talking to my son who's in his mid-20s as well. I mean, these young team members, they want to come in, they want to be part of a team. They want to have an impact. So giving them like space to thrive, with with the managing up program, so that they keep everybody in the loop and they're not making decisions on their own, but they're rallying folks to the charge. I mean, I think that's really important for retention, and top talent is always seeking what else they can do to have impact. No one wants to do the same thing over and over and over again. They're just going to get bored and leave. So that's the thing. Is one of my early experiences at a nonprofit when we were building the organization was, I spent a lot of years there, and people are like, wow, you spent a lot of years. I said, because every year was different. Every year was different for me. And I had to make that. I had to lead my own career in that way, because I said, oh, I can take that. I'll take care of that. I offered myself, but also it was like, you're the best one for that. But you made sure it was fresh, and that the nonprofit is not doing the same thing over and over again, just maintaining. That just becomes boring. No one wants to stay there. People want to be a part of success. Donors want to fund success. So you have to show progress. So I think you want to make people feel that they're part of something that's moving, and that something you're making something different for that staff member every year. Or, it doesn't mean that they have to get rid of, I always used to say, it doesn't mean you have to stop doing what you're doing, but you can add on to your job so it keeps it fresh for you until we can hire somebody to do that work for you. So it's a balance. So I hope I'm answering that right. But I think so. I think the other thing with turnover is that if they don't have a good trust or relationship with their manager, you got to make sure that your management team is also striving to be their best and to allow for ownership and empowerment of their team. And there's a culture within those each division's dynamics that they feel special about. I think that's important. I think, sometimes in nonprofits, you'll get the stepping stone effect. You get people who just want to come in and work a year or two, say they got it under their belt and they're going to use the experience to go do something else. And also there's a limited opportunities for growth. That's another reason in the industry, sometimes with a small nonprofit, is that you can't, a lot of times people will come and say, what's my growth trajectory? And I've had a lot of staff members in my career in that they'll walk in and they'll go like, what's my growth trajectory? And they're at one level, and there's only the next level up is it. And then so there's not much in between, but I always say you could go with, and my COO does the same thing here. We always encourage growth within your position, not necessarily always looking at a stepping stone. You can get more salary, you get more responsibility, you get more stuff on your resume. Maybe there's a slight title change, but this higher, we try not to move into this like, oh, you'll go from here to here to here to here, and that's my growth trajectory, because sometimes that position's not open, and we don't want to lose great talent. So we offer some roles in different ways that we take it individually, or we want to maintain equity in our organization, so we try to promote it among our teams. But sometimes you can't retain them. You can't. There is going to be natural turnover. You got to embrace it and know that there's another great person waiting to come work in your nonprofit. So I don't let it get to me when we have turnover. It's sometimes we can't meet somebody's wish list of what they're looking for in an organization, but we can do our best to provide an enriching environment. And I do believe that if a team member is not feeling a part of a team or doesn't understand, doesn't have clarity, Lou also mentioned this, clarity is critical. They understand their expectations and what they're accountable to. That just sets the path, and they feel like they're meeting what they want for the organization, but then themselves as well. So it can get damaged if you don't have somebody helping nurture that. So you got to be looking out all the time for that. And we set some practices and new processes in place at the trust to ensure that we are working really solid as a core team.
I'll just add that the stepping stone scenario that you described is not just in the nonprofit sector.
Yeah,
I worked in the corporate world, and I saw it happen in some functions of this particular organization, that there was, they would come in and they were there a year and a half or 2 years, and then they went on somewhere else. So it's the reality, right?
Yeah, and Julio, one of the things I've said, I've mentored and coached. I get a lot of young team go, what's your experience? What do you suggest for me right out of college? And I'm always like, stay in an organization and learn everything you can. Like, don't just dabble and go, okay, I'm going to move on to somebody else that can teach me something else. The truth is, today, the young team members and all team members, I think the industry across, not even for nonprofits, people want to have professional development. It's one of the things my COO is working on is professional development, providing opportunities for growth and learning. So otherwise they're going to go seek it out somewhere else. And it's not just providing professional development. So we check that box. It's I always encourage, learn everything you can in your place. Don't just race off to find some new shiny coin to go learn from. You could learn a lot in the current place you're at. Just ask or communicate with your direct report. Offer to take on something. You see somebody can't get something done, it doesn't mean they're not capable. It just means they got too much on their plate. You can take something off, and therefore you get to own that and feel good about it. So I think, and then you'll learn. One of the things I've done when I was in my early 20s was like, my hands were in everything, which I loved because it was a young nonprofit and we were only a handful of people. And so I had to do more jobs, and that was inspiring and enriching for me to learn everything. And it took me with my career. So I'm always encouraging, don't leave after a year. Don't leave after 2 years. Like, try to really invest in the organization, and then you can show your impact you had to your next employer. I know people are going to leave, but try to maximize what you can go with, and let us be a reference and say, wow, look at the impact that they had.
Yeah, I think smaller organizations should realize that, when you, particularly somebody younger in their career, it's an opportunity for this individual to get broader exposure to what a smaller organization. Big organizations, it can be very easy to be siloed into different jobs. Smaller organizations provide that opportunity for cross training, broader exposure, etc. So
yeah, to thrive, you thrive, and so in a lot of ways, it's good.
Absolutely. So Lou, as I said, you both have been in the nonprofit and association sector for some time. I'm just curious, and I think Catherine alluded to some of this earlier in her comments here, but are candidates today and new hires, are they looking for something different than what you saw maybe in the 2010s or even pre-COVID, if you will?
Yeah, I think the biggest change. So, before COVID happened, there was a consistency, right? Over years, you kind of knew what candidates were looking for, and then the pandemic happened, and it blew everything up. And for a while in 2020 and 21, the top of everyone's mind was, can I work from home? That was it. People, there was a lot of turnover because of that. And at that time when the pandemic happened, that's when I was at the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, and we had a lot of people who left within a month because life happened. There was a lot of changes that were going on, and then that was the big trend in our hiring. People, when they came to us, that was one of the first things they asked for was, what's the remote situation? Can I work from home? And I didn't see that. I didn't see that a lot. Maybe it came up once in a while in interviews, but for the most part, people just accepted you came to the office. I think the change that's happened recently is that candidates now are looking for logic around your approach to where you work. So they want to hear a plan. So, you can't be too far at either extreme. What candidates don't want to hear is you have to be in the office 5 days a week. You have to be in your seat by 9 a.m. and you can't leave before 4:55 p.m. or else you're going to be, looked down upon, right? People
That's
don't want that,
completely different. Yeah.
right? But on the other end of the spectrum, what people don't want to hear is, hey, we want to build culture. We want to support you. We want to have a team. But by the way, we got rid of our office. And if
Yeah.
you want to meet with your supervisor, you can go to the Panera and you can try to get on the Wi-Fi there and you guys can have a meeting. And it's like, that's not helpful either. And it doesn't reinforce, what you're trying to accomplish there. So I think there has to be cohesion between what your plan is and what you're proposing in terms of work. And that's the position, the work that they're doing, the environment they're going to do it in. And people are getting more savvy with this stuff. I mean, there's more information out there and people can read between the lines, and if you have a thoughtful plan when it comes to, say part-time work from home, that flexibility, that's a good thing. And also taking into account that different people have different needs. Some people might say, man, I need to be able to work from home most of the time for these reasons. But for other people, that's actually a big problem. They don't want to work from home because maybe they can't. Maybe they have small children at home, or maybe they do better work when they, have a true separation between their living space and their workspace. Like it's another type of diversity, right? Diversity in work preferences. And you have to recognize that, and you have to have a plan. So that's really important in making sure that you get the folks that you want.
I love the apply logic to it, right? So just what's the right. But Catherine, what's your approach been?
Well, I think Lou's absolutely right on all the marks. I think we're in an interesting transition period where everybody's been used to this like hybrid and flex, and I don't have to go in anytime I don't, there's a trending of like for a nonprofit, like I miss that creative energy of people in a room together. And a lot of times magic happens when you're together. But we've done very well with Zooms. We've done the virtual experience has become like a wonderful alternative. We do a lot of fundraising virtually. Like I don't have to travel all over the world, over the country. It saves money. It's amazing. So there's some definite pros to what's happening today. But for employees, I think we still want to make sure I think Lou said this, is like, listen, there's a diversity of what people need and what they want to be successful and different styles. And so I think we want to be good listeners, and we're putting those processes in place, systems in place to be that. And then to, try to make sure that we're providing those kinds of activities. I think a couple other things that I think are important. Well, one thought I was going to say is just when you have teams, I think what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing is like people have different requests. Like if there's a team that's like, oh, we're going to go offsite and do a blank. It's like, it's awesome because people are like, I'll come in for that on a Friday. You know what I mean? Or, it's like they want to be a good member of their team and show success to their team. So as long as that team dynamic is great, doesn't have to be across the whole organization. We all have, different programs and plans. And I love that flexibility. I think we have worked really hard to create some benefits. We create moments where we can get together. We have retreats, we do excursions. I'm noticing our teams we just got, fun tickets to the Baltimore Orioles, owners box, and like, everybody was signing up for it. They all wanted to go, and it's like fun things like that are really, really important. I also think what we're noticing more, not noticing more, but I think it's always been a part of important management tools is the recognition and the acknowledgements of hard work and what they're doing, and how do we celebrate those times. So we have a lot of different ways we do shout outs and celebrations and recognizing our successes. I had somebody say to me recently, which was like another, like, I come from a different, history in my work life, but it's like, the younger generation, they're used to doing something and having 100 likes. They do something, they turn in a project, they get a nice thank you. It's like, something's not right. They don't like me, so we're having to realize that there are different ways that people like, we have to be attentive and attuned to what the needs are of your team to retain them and see or that they learn a new way in the workforce, but not to be ignoring of some of the things that have been practice mindsets for for folks, so I think it's important that we're flexible, and we work hard to think about the different benefits and the different ways to honor and congratulate and recognize folks for great work.
Great. That's really great from both of you. When it comes to building a recruitment strategy, so let's say you have a hard to fill role, if you will, right? And where hard, sounds like Catherine, you
You
got
go to
this
DRI. Don't you do that?
plug in right there. But no, seriously, just like you got an aggressive campaign here or fundraising goal, right? And
Yep.
so you probably need to staff up your development team or maybe in development
Our
operations,
program teams. Yep.
all support functions there. So what strategies have you been using, if you will? Any tools that you've been using? Because we're happy to help you, but we're not going to be the right partner for every single search, because there may be some that you just recruit from yourself. But so what kind of tools, for instance, have you been using that have been working in attracting good talent?
Yeah, so thank you. We have actually my COO has been fabulous. Little plug for Cindy Willman. She's been putting in some really good practices at the trust over the last couple of years, and we've had practices, since I started, but we were a smaller organization, and as we've grown, we've gotten some investment funds to grow and support the organization's growth for our big campaign. So we've instilled a lot of good practices. We've got, scoring rubrics. We've got multiple team members that participate. We think about sources. How do we source good candidates? We have a good consultant who helps us evaluate our processes. We have a number of things. We use I had to look, I'm looking down because I'm looking for the name because I only have the acronym. The predictive index is a tool we use. And of course, there's multiple tools, but we use the predictive index to help us think through candidates. And one of the, and maybe this is one of my best practice tips too, is that you want to just keep thinking through your talent. And one of my things I always look at is it's the 49-51%. So the 49, you kind of look at and evaluate an employee based on their experience or expertise. 51% is the emotional quotient, which is your, could you invite this person home for dinner with your family? Could you take this person with you to a very, very important donor pitch? What is, could this person walk into a room and manage a meeting on their own if you couldn't do it, or if their manager couldn't do it? It's like, what are those different filters to think through? And, usually that'll help you build your strong, you're recruiting in for the right type of person you want in your organization.
I'm curious, Lou, because you mentioned you were at this foundation and now this association. So I'm wondering what that recruiting strategy, the differences, because the organizations were different, cultures were different. So I'm just kind of curious on your recruiting strategy. How are things different, if you will?
Yeah, well, there's differences, but I'm actually going to focus on what's more the same. What's the same is that the better way to do this is to really focus on the goals of the position you're trying to hire. And that is the case. You mentioned these hard to fill positions. When I was at the Alliance, there were a lot of very specific jobs that probably only exist at a colon cancer charity, right? You don't have these same roles at Target or Google or even Catherine's organization or my organization now. So how do you approach that? And again, the trick is focus on the goals and simultaneously really be intentional about requirements. So, it's very easy to fall into the template of, okay, look, for this position, they need to have this many years experience. They need to have, this particular training already. And then when you start to look at the goals and say, okay, for this position, what will success look like for this role? Okay, well, that's what the goals are. What skills do we think someone would need to actually accomplish that goal? And when you think about it in that perspective, then some of these arbitrary, 5 years management experience. Okay, well, do they actually need that in order to achieve this goal here? And once you have a broader, frame of reference like that, then it makes it a little easier to find people who can be successful in these specialized roles, even if they haven't been in them before. And I think that's true where I am now at a trade association, and I think that's true at the C3 as well.
Yeah, I was going
That's
to say,
Mhm.
Julio, for at Lou's point, I had an executive director tell me one time the best fundraiser was not a fundraiser. The best person they had for the VP job or whatever was a lawyer, and the reason why is because they knew how to make it solicit a deal, close a deal, like get it, really think about the end game and close it, which is
Mhm.
what you need in a fundraiser, somebody who closes.
Mhm.
So I just thought that was fascinating. He goes, I was not needing this person to know how to raise money. This person had done so many deals and know about getting the end game. So to your point, Lou, I really appreciate that. It's about what's the role and what are you looking for in that role? And sometimes you can think outside the box. You'll find great talent.
That's when before we start a search, we meet with a client and we help establish, you both know this, a criteria matrix, right?
Yeah.
What are the must-haves, the highly desirables, and the nice-to-haves? And we
Yeah.
have some real conversations because there may be, somebody who says like, well, they must have a master's degree.
Yeah.
It's like, well, depending on the role, that may be right. Even a PhD may be right. But but for many roles, that may just be really a nice to have, right? And so that's just an example, right? But yeah, it really helps to it helps with your outreach because it makes it that much more focused. But more importantly, it helps with your evaluation. It's like, okay, is this the right candidate for this role? Because they meet this criteria matrix perfectly, or 90%, or whatever that is. So thank you both. That's actually excellent. Well, I kind of asked a little bit about this earlier, but like regarding like mentoring, development programs, investing in somebody to like even get additional education, whether it's a certification, something of that nature, that may not be available to every single one employee in your organization. And so, how do you go about, for instance, identifying again that high potential or individual who could benefit from the additional training, and that not only be great for the individual but also great for the organization? What kind of exercises or filter do you utilize to identify that those individuals that are candidate for such opportunities? Lou?
Yeah, I think, professional development is one of those things that people have very different views of.
Mhm.
And sometimes it can be intimidating, especially for younger employees to think that they qualify for it or that they should be engaged in it. So I think there's a couple strategies that we employ. One is really making it clear that everyone in the organization should feel empowered to invest in professional development and that the organization will support them. We at NATO have specific conversations with every staff member about this exact topic. So it's actually not part of the annual review talking about professional development. That's actually not a great place to talk about professional development. If you have one review conversation once a year where you're talking about everything, your bonus, your raise, your goals, your performance, and professional development, what happens is if people are thinking that wait a minute, if I'm going to confess to you that I think I need more education in a certain topic, is that going to affect my raise or my promotion or my bonus? They never say anything. So you
Mhm.
separate that conversation out. And really be honest about it and say, we want to invest in you. We empower you to go look for the opportunities that make the most sense for you. It doesn't work when, as a supervisor, we say, okay, here are the 3 classes you should be taking, or here are the networking groups you should belong to. Because again, everybody's different. You have to let them go to the opportunities that call to them. And maybe it is a class, maybe it is a professional society. Those are, and maybe it's just internal mentorship where they say, I'd really like to learn more from this other person in the organization who does a really cool job. It's not really in my department, but this maybe is a place I want to go. You have to make that clear that that's okay. Because once you have someone who reaches out and says, I'd like to do this, and you say, well, you know what, we don't have the budget for you to sign up for this course, you'll never hear from that person again for professional development. You've lost the opportunity. So if you mean it, put the offer out there and then do everything you can to support it when they respond.
Excellent. Thank you. In the interest of time, I'd like to make sure that we allow the next few minutes to answer any questions that the audience may have submitted. Can we get any list of questions from the audience, please? So I'm looking right now, and let's see. I got a question here from, and I hope I'm not butchering the name. Sangith, I'm just going to say Sangith right now. So we'll be interested to know what keeps this associates or employees, so what retains them, if you will. More often than not, the initial euphoria tends to wane off by the end of the first year. So I'm very excited to join the organization, but what keeps them beyond that, if you will? Can either one of you take a stab at that one? Catherine, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's what I sort of alluded to earlier, which is, I think the relationship that employee has with his or her peers, their direct reports, there's got to be a strong relationship built and a sense of recognition that this person is having an effect. If the leader of the organization or the manager is like, God, this person's so great, but they're kind of waning interest, you gotta do some work to keep them excited. So, it's communication, it's relationships and communication. You gotta be able to ask them to say, what else do you need? What can I do to make you feel more motivated? What can I do? It might be that they're just bored or they're not feeling recognized. They're not, a lot of times it's recognition now, and it's not sort of, if you're younger, it's about recognition. So it's relationship, it's, communication, recognition. And again, I think Lou and I have said this, it's empowering them. They need to feel empowered and that they own something and they can control the outcome with you or with the team, or can affect it. So they feel important. They feel they're making a difference, especially at a nonprofit. They want to feel that their work is having impact. So you got to remind them. I always, when I send somebody kind of waning, it's like, let's go talk to them. Let's find out what's going on, because you don't want to be reactive. You want to be proactive. You want to be reactive to them, like giving you a 2-week notice. Like, what did that come from? You want to be proactive and thinking, hey, you looking for something else? Yeah. Or this isn't quite the organization I thought. And why? Get feedback. So that's my contribution, Lou, which.
We had somebody, I will piggyback on something you just said, Catherine, about recognition. Get creative about it. It doesn't necessarily need to mean a handwritten note. And it could be that. It doesn't have to be an award that's presented in front of everybody.
No.
It could simply be a message to the team. Hey, I just want to recognize Lou for the wonderful job he's been doing on X, Y, and Z. And it could be to the to the whole team. It could be to the department. It could be on LinkedIn, for that matter, right?
It could also, recognition could also be, hey, I want you to go attend this 2-day conference for us and represent the organization and take notes and bring back information for everybody. It's like, you want to feed they're looking for something, they're waning, they're looking for something. And maybe that you need to give them recharge. You got to get them recharged on things.
So I'm going to move on to the next
all
question.
the levels of management have to help. It's not a one person has to keep an eye out. It requires everybody to look out for everybody.
Sorry, Catherine. So I want to make sure we answer. John Lewis asked me a question here. So it says, I agree that broad, diverse experience is important, but many employers seem to value specialization. Interested in what Julio is seeing. And I guess I'd be curious what Lou, for instance, is seeing. But I think earlier in your career, getting kind of that broad level of experience, if anything, I think it'd be helpful for you to decide, is this the career path I want? Is this that, because in a nonprofit, in any kind of organization, you could be doing finance, you could be doing operations, you could be doing development, you could be doing HR stuff, right? And so just get that broader experience earlier on, and that will allow you to decide what is the area that is most of interest to me, right? I think it'll make you that much more valuable to the organization that you're with, because now you become kind of like this pinch hitter, frankly, that can be moved to whatever the area that is most needed within the organization. So that's my perspective. Later in your career, yeah, I would agree that higher level of specialization is more valuable, right? So we have an anonymous question here. I'm curious, how you unbiased in the hiring process, given Catherine's point about the 51% of personal connection? Isn't this a recipe for bias?
Yeah, it's good. That's a good question. Yeah.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
anyway, Catherine, your thoughts, I guess.
Well, or Lou wants to answer that, and then I can.
I can start it.
That's a very good question. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's the most important question when you're hiring, right?
Yeah.
And I've said this before, I'm going to keep going back to it. You have to focus on the goals of the job.
Yep.
And there's many ways for that unconscious bias to creep into the process along the way. Catherine referenced one of these before, making sure you have, for example, a team of people who are looking at resumes when you're, very early on in the process, where, if you have, it's, every time you do this, the person who's the direct supervisor always wants to read all the resumes and select the top 10 that are going to be interviewed. And that's great. You want to encourage excitement about the hiring process, but having one person be the sole arbiter of that leads to unconscious bias factoring in. And it could be on any dimension. It could be on something like gender. It could be on something like they went to a big school, and big schools better train people. So all of the applicants that make it through the next round are people who, have, went to a big school. And we're all guilty of this. So the way to fight this is to have multiple people in the process and have discussions about this. Talk about why. Why do you think these candidates should advance? Whether it's with resumes, with interviews, one of the things that we do, it's very tempting after an interview is done for the first question that people want to do, as soon as the candidate walks out the door, people want to say yes or no. And we put this rule in place. You can't do that. It goes against all of your internal instincts to do that. But before you talk about that, because again, there's the bias there where someone says that person, I don't know that they, conform to my idea of what this position is. Don't even let it get to that place. Talk about a goal and say, okay, we want this person to, reach out to donors. Do we think they have the ability to do that? And you're focusing on that goal. And then if you have someone say, well, yeah, I think this candidate can or can't do it based on that, you start to break down some of those biases so that you're hiring people based on their ability to do the job and not these, intangibles that sometimes, are not fair to the candidate.
Listen, I think we could probably go on much longer answering this question, and we actually have a few more questions, but unfortunately, it looks like we have 2 minutes left, and so we're going to need to wrap this up. We will do our best to answer the rest of the questions to those individuals, but on behalf of DRiWaterstone, I would just like to thank both Lou and Catherine for their time, for their insights. Frankly, you've been very generous, again, with both not only your time, but your knowledge and your experience. So your stories have been very insightful and helpful for today, for our conversation. I found them very valuable. I hope that the audience found them very valuable as well. I also like to thank Hunt Scanlon Media for hosting us today. And we would not have been able to do this without you. So thank you very much. And finally, I'd like to thank you all for taking time to meet with us, to ask us these questions. Very insightful, by the way. We'd love to keep the conversation going. I'll just put this out there on my behalf. You can look me up on LinkedIn and connect with me. On top of that, please visit DRiWaterstonehc.com to connect with our teams. And you can find out more about what's like to work with an executive search firm. We'll also see all the different job opportunities that we're working on at any given time. And so if you're a nonprofit leader, association leader, foundation leader, and you're looking to bulk up your team, or you're experiencing turnover and looking to make some additions to your team, please look us up. This is what we do. We specialize in purpose and mission-driven organizations only. And that is our focus. That's who we're dedicated to working with. So we would love to have an opportunity to work with you. So thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day and hopefully a wonderful weekend starting tomorrow. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you all.